Mr. Harley, good morning, sir.
Say hello to a new friend on an old road. Take a two-lane trip of memories into mysteries unknown. Come along for the ride. Jim Hinckley's America. Jim Hinckley's America.
Hey, good morning, everybody. I hope everybody's doing well today. Be with you in just a minute. We're just getting everything set up here. Lord be willing, and the creek doesn't rise. We should have a really fun program for you today. I think you're going to have a lot of fun with this. Good morning, Harley and Angela and Frank. Good morning, Keith. How is everybody today? Good, good, good. We got everybody here when we're about to roll. Who's going to do our audio check this morning? No Andy. No winners for the heated steering wheel. Hello, Roberto. Do we have, who's going to do our sound check this morning? Jim, how are you doing? Good, Jim, thank you.
Say hello to a new friend on an old road. Take a two-lane trip of memories into mysteries unknown. Come along for the ride. Jim Hinckley's America. Jim Hinckley's America.
Hey, good morning, mi amigos. Here in my neighborhood, it looks like our annual week of winter is fast approaching. If you plan on traveling in northern Arizona during the first days of the new week, be prepared for snow, ice, and cold, especially in the high country near Williams and Flagstaff. For folks that only travel this country during spring or summer, it can be quite a surprise to learn that we actually have winter in Arizona. So, how is everyone doing this morning? I know that most of us have developed a bit of cabin fever this past few months and are hankering for a road trip adventure. Do you have any travel plans for the new year? Where are you going? How do you like my squeaking chair here? Well, I do hope that this program series about Route 66 gives you a few ideas and sparks a bit of road trip inspiration. As always, feel free to chime in at any time and I'll answer your questions before closing out the program. Before I share a Route 66 adventure in Texas, we need to take care of a bit of business. First, I want to give a shout out to the boys of the road crew for our theme song. And as we're talking road trip inspiration this morning, take a listen to the music of the Road Crew at roadcrew66.com and spark dreams of adventures on the open road. And I want to give a shout out to a few of our sponsors. We start with Route 66 navigation. Between the app, the Mother Road Route 66 Passport, and the free ebook about Route 66 travel planning in a half a dozen languages, Route 66 navigation is everything you need for a successful Route 66 adventure. Check it out at route66navigation.com. And then there is Victoria's Sugar Shack in Kingman, Arizona. That's my go-to place for a sweet treat, and it's a favorite date spot for my dearest friend and me. Nice winter's morning of warm fire, raspberry cruffin, and a hot cup of coffee. And I want to give a shout out, of course, to Route 66 Tours. If you want to experience this amazing highway, the one you saw in Easy Rider, give them a call. Dale, Daniel, and their team have intimate knowledge of the old double six and of touring on a motorcycle. And last but not least, the magical Roadrunner Lodge in Tucumcari, New Mexico. It's a 1964 era time capsule wrapped in modern amenities. Okay, let's get to our trivia contest. Andy, no one did figure this out. I stumped him. This morning, the first right answer will win a signed copy of 100 Things to Do on Route 66 Before You Die. Kind of one of my top 10 list for things to see along Route 66. Museums, motels, restaurants, attractions. And as I said, we didn't have an answer last week. The first car to offer a heated steering wheel as optional equipment was the luxurious McFarlane Knickerbocker. This was a car that sold new for something like $9,000 back in 1920. Well, in today's trivia contest, let me put that in perspective real quick. Imagine $9,000 for a new car. A new Ford was somewhere around $500. Well, let's get to today's trivia contest. In the 1920s, there was a Route 66 community with a particularly nasty reputation. Newspapers throughout the United States talked about this place. As an example, there was one news story in New York that contained an interview with a store owner in this town. And she said that when robbers hit the store at noon, she cried and told them there's no money in the till, as the store had been robbed that morning. So what is the name of this Route 66 community? Okay, let's get started with our adventure in Texas. Only Kansas has fewer Route 66 miles than Texas. But like Kansas, to follow the old double six across the Panhandle is chock full of opportunities to see some pretty damned amazing places, meet some wonderful folk, and enjoy a good meal. As you head west into Texas, from Texola in Oklahoma, your first stop is going to be Shamrock. Sadly, I have recently learned that Big Vern Steakhouse is now permanently closed. So for me, that means no more beef stew chased with cold Lone Star beer on our next visit to Shamrock. This has been our go-to spot for many years, as it was just a block from the Western Motel, which is a real favorite of ours. You see the picture to the left? Look between the gas pumps. You can see the Western Motel. This motel provides a front row seat to the lighting of the neon on this iconic U Drop In. And that's just one reason to make this an overnight stop. The best reason is the Patel family and their attention to detail and their focus on making sure the guests are treated like family. As just in one example, in October 29, we were headed back to Arizona, and I was scheduled to stop in Amarillo that night. But by the time we hit Elk City in Oklahoma, A winter storm was blowing in, and it started to look pretty damn nasty. So I called the Western Motel, and even though we had not been a guest there for 18 months, they remembered me as well as a couple of our special needs. He said, "I'll get right back to you," and he did. Within 10 minutes, he just wanted to make sure that he could accommodate us. That's the way to run a business. You know, I mentioned that Shamrock is just full of little surprises and small-time charm. This old restored Magnolia station is just a few blocks off Route 66. I really suggest that you make time for just a bit of exploration. Cruise the town a bit. There is one downside to Shamrock, and I need to note. Lots of businesses, including the markets, close early, especially on Sundays. And even before COVID, a lot of the restaurants were closed on Sunday nights. Just plan accordingly. But don't let little things like this deter you from a stay at the Western Motel and a visit to You Drop In. There's a lot of ways to get around this. Just be adventuresome. I noted that the You Drop In is a blending of the past and future. Here's just one example. After attending the 2014 International Festival in Kingman, Arizona, and the Crossroads of the Past and Future Conference, Larry Clounce, the Economic Development Director in Shamrock, he grabbed the bull by the horns and made arrangements with Tesla and added charging stations to the You Drop In. And then he added other charging facilities as well. And that takes us to McLean, Texas. McLean, it stretches the definition of ghost town, but there is every indication that it's on the fast track to becoming just that. Lots and lots of history here and lots of photo ops. And there is some first-rate eating at the Red River Steakhouse. Okay, a couple of interesting tidbits about McLean. There was a POW camp here during World War II, and the site is often overlooked by travelers. It's just a little bit to the east of town and just a bit off Route 66. And McLean was the last Route 66 community in Texas to be bypassed by I-40. That was back in 1984. And for years, aside from cattle, agriculture, garages, and gas stations, the big industry in town was the brazier factory. This gave the town an unofficial title of the uplift capital of the world. And as promised last week, there is a connection to this dusty little Texas cow town and the Titanic. That story is told in exhibits at the Texas Route 66 Museum and Devil's Rope Museum that's housed in the old brazier factory. And the connection is Alfred Rowe, really fascinating fella. His parents were British. He was born in Peru. He learned ranching from Charles Goodnight, established one of the biggest ranches in the Panhandle, donated the land for the town site of McLean, and then when he moved back to England, every year he'd try to get back to his ranch that he'd left with an absentee owner. And in 1912, he booked passage on the Titanic. Okay, the Devil's Rope Museum. Now, before you laugh, I got to tell you that this is really a fascinating museum. And I also have to tell you that before my first visit, never in a million years would have I thought that a barbed wire museum was worth a second or even third visit. And as you motor west, ghost towns. Allen Reed is less than a wide spot in the road, but there are some great photo ops that hint of better times. And Jericho has even less than Allen Reed, but that is changing. An ambitious young couple has purchased the old town site that consists of a couple tumble-down old farmhouses and a decrepit auto court west of the historic cemetery. They have some very big plans for the future of this little ghost town. And if you're in the neighborhood, give them a hand in April. It should be a lot of fun. Groom was hit hard when the interstate curtailed the endless stream of cars through town on Route 66. Still, it has survived surprisingly well, even though many businesses closed. The grain silos loom large over Route 66 and are seen for miles on the plains. There's a great little cafe, a small market, a quaint residential district with picturesque old homes, and the Chalet Inn. Now, the Chalet Inn is bare bones basic, almost military barracks sterile. But it is clean, it is quiet, and it is comfortable. And even better, it's reasonably priced. On my last stop, a room was just $54 per night. Of course, the big attraction in Groom is the illuminated 190-foot tall cross of our Lord Jesus Christ that dominates a small park. At night, the cross can be seen for miles on the prairie. Between Groom and Amarillo, the big city in the Panhandle made famous by the big Texan steak ranch and the free 72-ounce steak dinner, forlorn relics of better times line the old highway. I should explain that free dinner. It's a gimmick. If you can eat the entire free 72-ounce steak dinner in 1 hour, it's free. And you can check it out. They've got a website and a live cam. You can watch people trying to accomplish this feat. But as you motor west out of Groom, Washburn is less than a wide spot in the road. This old town is on the earliest alignment of the highway. It never really amounted to much, but at least Route 66 gave it a pulse. Conway has an interesting old school and long abandoned and some heavily vandalized and empty businesses such as a truck stop, a restaurant, motel. Got to ask you a question. Am I the only person that really wants to give graffiti vandals a swift kick in the backside? And that takes us to the big city in the Panhandle, Amarillo. You know, even among Route 66 enthusiasts, Amarillo is best known for the big Texan and the Cadillac Ranch west of town. What's interesting about that is neither of these attractions is on Route 66. The big Texan's original location was on Route 66, but with construction of I-40, the restaurant moved out to the new highway and a motel was added. You know, it's a fascinating place, but as with most communities, Route 66 followed several different courses through town over the years. And if your schedule isn't conducive to a lot of exploration, be sure to check out the historic 6th Street district and the San Jacinto neighborhood. Lots of neat stuff there. The Lyle Gallery, Texas Ivy Antiques, the Golden Light Cafe, and there's an unofficial visitor center at 1900 Southwest 6th Avenue. That's you can see some of the work of Jim Livingston, the photographer. You can find his work at some of the banks in Amarillo and at the airport as well. This boy knows his way around a camera, I guarantee you. I mentioned the Golden Light Cafe. You know, it's a rough-looking little place that opened in 1946, but it's a time capsule roadhouse. And for me, the green chili, the grilled green chili buffalo burger and a bottle of Lone Star beer, that is a meal. I'll give you a word of warning. The peppers are not mild, and you'll be grateful for that beer. Amarillo is the midpoint of a Route 66 adventure across the Panhandle. To the west is Wildorado, a once wild and woolly little town. It's now home to a huge and very smelly feedlot. Make a stop to photograph some of the roadside ruins, and you'll meet some of the biggest flies that you've ever encountered. Surprisingly, until recently, there was a really good restaurant here, the Windy Cow Cafe. And you'll be tempted to zip through diminutive Vega, but don't do it. If you turn to the north off Route 66, up towards the courthouse, lots of neat stuff. There's a fascinating old Magnolia oil station that's restored to its original 1920s appearance. Dot's Mini Museum is a hoot. And the Milburn Price Culture Museum will really surprise you. It's such a quality museum like this really seems out of place in a dusty little town in Texas Panhandle. And then, of course, next up is Adrian. This is the midpoint on Route 66 between Chicago and Santa Monica. Anybody want to guess what the big attraction is in Adrian? Well, it's the Midpoint Park and Midpoint Cafe, where superb pie and coffee is the order of the day. And just a little bit to the east is a long-closed restaurant and gas station. It was unofficially called the Bent Door Cafe. It's kind of odd. The doors and most windows were salvaged from an airfield control tower and are cantilevered. It's kind of unusual, to say the very least. From Adrian west, Route 66 is largely buried under I-40. But it's really neat. All of a sudden, you'll be cruising along, and everything changes. You're on the Great Plains. Everything's kind of flat, some rolling hills. And all of a sudden, you break out of the cap rock, and the landscape starts to seem really western. But there's more surprises here, and it requires just the slightest of detours on a paved road at exit 0. This is the ghost town of Glen Rio. The town itself is pretty interesting. It dates back to about 1905. And this town that now has a population of less than 5 once had a newspaper, a railroad depot, hotel, motels, lumber yards, stores, and restaurants. And within about 12 months of I-40 opening a mile or so out of town, the almost every business in town had closed. I think the only one left was the bar. One of the most famous photo ops is an old restaurant and motel that was within spitting distance of the New Mexico state line. And that's the postcard I have here for you. I have on the screen. The east side of the motel sign read, "Last stop in Texas, motel and cafe." The west side of the sign read, "First stop in Texas, motel and cafe." Until quite recently, this property had sat largely undisturbed, but I am very sorry to say this, vandals are starting to take their toll. Now, if you look at this picture, you look to see that place where it says Cocktail Lounge? That's a little bar to the west. You can see it here. That was the scene of a brutal murder. This was just after completion of the bypass when the old town was fading fast. I chronicled the story in my book, Murder and Mayhem on the Main Street of America, Tales from Bloody 66. And you can order that on our website, jimhinckleysamerica.com. How's that for a little shameless self-promotion? And there's the motel today. It's really odd to stand in an empty 4-lane highway knowing how busy this was just 40 years ago. Just stand there and listen to the wind. Let your imagination run wild. The old town is well worth a visit, but please be respectful of the fragile ruins. And please keep in mind that folks still live here. And their dogs roam free. If you'd like to see a bit more of Glen Rio or learn a bit more, I created a video about the town and I gave a tour. And you can find that on the Jim Hinckley YouTube channel. Glen Rio literally straddles the state line. And that makes for some interesting stories, some of which I bet are true. Here's something to consider. Most of the town is located in Deaf Smith County, Texas. Deaf Smith is kind of interesting. Apparently the fellow had a connection to the Alamo, but that's a story for another day. But most of Glen Rio is in Deaf Smith County, Texas. Now this county was dry. That means no alcohol. So the bars and even the gas station that sold beer, they were in the New Mexico side of town. West of Glen Rio, there are 2 different courses for Route 66. as the highway crosses into New Mexico. The newer alignment is truncated by I-40. The original alignment is now a graded gravel road that can be followed through the ghost town of ND and all the way down the hill to San Juan, New Mexico. Here's a little bit of a teaser for you. ND was where the last horse-mounted posse in the territory of New Mexico dealt with a band of rustlers. But that story, however, will have to wait until next week's episode of Coffee with Jim when we explore Route 66 in New Mexico. We're getting close to wrapping things up here. I try not to run this over about 30 minutes because I know that I'm beating my gums here. I want to give a shout out to Connie Eccles at the Wagon Wheel Motel for sponsoring these programs. No Route 66 adventure can be considered complete, in my opinion, without a stop at the iconic Wagon Wheel Motel in Cuba, Missouri. And I need to say thank you to Keith for a coffee cup sponsor of the week, KWLP 100.9 FM in Peach Springs, Arizona, the Wallapai Nation's local radio station. Hey, if you're cruising Route 66 west of Seligman, take a listen. Personally, I love this eclectic station and the music selection. It is not uncommon to hear some new country music followed by a tune from Bob Marley, Pink Floyd, or even Hank Williams. I really like this station a lot. And if you'd like your business, museum, or community featured on Coffee with Jim, simply send us a mug. That's all there is to it. This free promotional opportunity is made possible in part through the magic of crowdfunding on our Patreon-based website. As our way of saying thank you for support, I provide an array of exclusive content and free access to any of our pay-per-view live stream programs. And if you want to add a check or cash that mug, you won't get no complaint from me. And of course, like I said, next week on Coffee with Jim, as we continue our westward Route 66 adventure, it's a tour of New Mexico. I got to tell you, it's going to be damn hard to crowd everything I want to share into a half hour. If I was to make this a special 1-hour program next week, what are your thoughts? As a bit of a teaser, there is a town on the pre-1937 alignment of Route 66, almost a ghost town, a little farming town. The chapel has cast a shadow over the Santa Fe Trail, the National Old Trails Road, and Route 66. And I'll have the story of a motel that was once a resort for Hollywood's rich and famous. And I'll be sharing some tips for one-of-a-kind and even quirky restaurants where the food is superb. My parting thought for the day is this, amigos. If we've learned anything from 2020, it is this. Our plans for the future are subject to change at a moment's notice. So make sure that the plans you make have one simple goal. When checkout does come, you want to leave this place a little better than it was when you got here. Now, before I get to your questions this morning, I want to share something else with you. I mentioned Jim Livingston, the photographer there in Amarillo, and his work, his gallery. This boy truly knows his way around a camera. This is an example of some of his work. He'll be taking the show on the road pretty soon. If you'd like to host an exhibition of his work, drop me a note and I'll put you in touch with Jim. And his prints are all for sale, but you want to liven up a room, take a gander at this. And with that said, let me get to your questions here and see what we can answer for you. We'll get going. Well, Mr. Kentner, good morning. And Jim Livingston, speak of the devil, there he is right there. Mr. Featherstone, thank you. And Andy, good. Angie, good morning. Hey, I owe you that bio and that outline for that program, and I will get that to you just real quick like here. Jim's of Route 66. You know, you got something there. I'm not sure what it is, but you got something there. Jim, you know, you're talking about snow. We've got our annual week of winter coming in here, and they're talking about 6 to 10 inches of snow here in Kangman over the next couple days. Good morning, Frank. Angela, thank you. Andy, that's a good idea. How about a rag wrapped around the steering wheel? Well, that's one way of doing it. You know what's really interesting about that period of time, the heated steering wheel and all? What I find really interesting is even that McFarlane really didn't have any brakes. It had rear wheel mechanical brakes. The touring cars didn't have windows. They had snap-on isinglass curtains. But yet you could order it with a heated steering wheel. Mark, good morning. Snowy and cold Aurora, Illinois. Well, I need a road trip too. But Mark, don't come to Arizona this coming week. It's going to be down around 20 degrees for a few days, but in a week from now, we'll be back. We'll be back where we're supposed to be. Frank, Angie, I'm used to snow too. It just doesn't mean I like it. Question, oldest friend, born in Amarillo, Texas on Route 66. Andy, I'm going to guess maybe somebody we might know together. Bill, that's a good guess. It was not Baxter Springs. I'll tell you this much, it wasn't in Kansas. Angela, the Patels are wonderful people. I'd be curious to hear what kind of advice she handed out to you. Angie, you're exactly right. Talk to people wherever you go. Most people are friendly and open, and it's that simple. And Patels are really good about pointing out a place to eat. My dearest friend and I, we travel with a pretty good food box and picnic basket. I'm partial to eating. I generally eat just one meal a day. I start about 4:30 in the morning and I quit about 10, 11 o'clock at night. So we just pack a little bit of stuff, and if we get into Shamrock and restaurants are closing or it's Sunday night, we try to catch one of the markets that's open. We like the little market downtown, the little mom and pop, and we just pick up some odds and ends and we relax in our room and have a little dinner. Yes, sir, Jim. The uplift capital of America. Oh, excellent, Angela. Wonderful, wonderful. You and I definitely need to talk. The Cactus Inn. I have not stayed there in a long, long time. That is exciting news. The Cactus Inn Motel is an original in McLean, Texas, an old Route 66 motel. That is exciting. The Devil's Rope Museum is definitely one of a kind, and it's unique, and it is fascinating. I was real surprised recently to learn that some of the old timers there in McLean are still going. Ted Drew, or excuse me, oh gosh, his name just slipped me, but they're still going and kicking well there. Well, Angela, give me a holler. Let's talk a bit. Frank, I'm glad to hear you're looking forward to making this trip. If I can help a little bit, just give me a holler, because telling people where to go, that's what I do. Sit at the bar and watch them make them burgers. Yes, yes, yes. Well, I know the folks in Texas will get upset with me, Angie, but I start to wonder sometimes if the big horsefly isn't the state bird of Texas. Some of the things I've seen there. Yeah, there's not much invoice between Adrian and Glen Rio. A little bit of history there. Nick Gerlich is your best go-to guy. But it's there's not much left. Not much left at all. Yeah, it's really kind of odd, but I tell you, Angie, of course I travel most of the time, unless I'm pushing for time. I usually drive my old Jeep, so I don't pay much attention. But the road, even the dirt road down to San Juan, is maintained pretty well, and it's a really nice drive. I really like that a lot. Yeah, Glen Rio is the Vandals have been taking a hole really making a mess of things, but it's still a neat place. Peter from England. Well, good morning. Yeah, Glen Rio is kind of melancholy. Yeah. Mark, you're right. The Wagon Wheel Motel is a plus. Most everybody that stays in Cuba, and don't get me wrong, Missouri Hick next door is a great restaurant. And during the fall, they have a hard pumpkin cider. I recommend that. But downtown, Frisco's and Riviera Maya, and the Cuba Bakery and Deli on Main Street. Those all three are within a block of each other, one block off Route 66. The radio station, KWLP 100.9 FM in Peach Springs, Arizona. Okay, well, Angie and Bill, let's see what we can do. I try not to wear out my welcome by beating my gums too much, and I was always told leave the audience wanting more. Let's see what we can do. New Mexico is one of my favorite states for Route 66 travel, and you've got two different Route 66. You got the pre-1937 alignment, but everything in New Mexico, I mean, it's just so interesting and old. You've got places like Acoma, one of the oldest communities in the United States, dating back to about 1200. You've got ghost towns and places there that date back, early 1820s. 2 hours might be pushing our luck, Andy. Mark, thank you. Frank, thank you, guys. Yeah, Jim is a photographer. That boy knows his way around the camera now, doesn't he? Can you imagine having his prints on your office wall? Thank you, Angela, for those comments. Jim, you're welcome. Well, we're going to see more of my smiling face, but, gosh darn it. I'm not sure that's a good idea sometimes. My ma says when I was a kid, the only way the dog would play with me is they tied meat around my neck. No, as far as I know, I-40 bypassed Glen Rio, but Route 66 never did. It went right down the street. Yeah, I thought so, Andy. 1943? Damn, I thought I was an old-timer. Jericho Gap. That's an interesting story. Stay clean, stay friendly. You bet. You bet. So she gave you some advice on the Cactus Motel. Very good. Themed rooms. Dedicating a room for each state across the route. 2 for Texas. Okay, Angela, we definitely need to talk. I'll send you a private message because I might be able to help you decorate a little bit. Michelle, good morning. Long time no hear. How are things in California? Keith, thank you. Well, guys, this has been fun. I'm glad you enjoyed it. We'll do this again next week. And invite your friends. We'll make it a coffee party and have a lot of fun with this. Next week, we're going to do Route 66 New Mexico. Coming up pretty soon. Watch for details on the Facebook page and on our website, JimHinckley'sAmerica.com. We're going to have a pay-per-view program, interactive, and I'll be doing it on the Romanticism of the Southwest, a 500-year love affair. I think you're going to find that interesting. Guys, thank you so very, very much for joining me today. Enjoyed it immensely. LaDonna, wonderful. Thank you. And, well, we'll get together next week. And, folks, please take care. Be careful. Be kind. And reach out to your neighbors. And, well, here's to a new year, new opportunities, and hopefully good times. Until we meet again, mi amigos, vaya con Dios.